Today we are making some last-minute holiday treats. I did not go out and buy anything. I'm using ingredients that I already have in my kitchen. I'm using some of the same ingredients for different recipes, and I will share with you what exactly we made. I will put the recipes in the description box. Welcome to Family Homesteading of West Texas. We are a homesteading family of 9. We grow, cook, and preserve most of our food from scratch. The first treat we are making is candied pecans. We have a lot of pecans. We still have pecans from last year, and then we also have fresh ones from this year. Almost all of our recipes will include pecans. And for all the sweetener I'm doing for this treats, I'm using sugar in the raw. That's not a processed sugar, so it isn't stripped of the nutrients. And for all of it that I'm making today, I'm using this kind of sugar. And I'm using this sugar exactly as I would a regular white sugar. I'm also using this sugar for recipes that calls for brown sugar. So for the dry ingredients is the sugar, a little bit of salt, and some cinnamon that I'm adding together. And I'll set that aside, and then I will start on the wet ingredients for the candied pecans. So we need some egg white, and we need to whip it up really good. So we need some pretty thick consistency on this. And since I am doubling the recipes, I am doing 2 eggs. I'm only using the white. I'm adding 2 teaspoons of vanilla to it, and then I will beat it up with the hand mixer. We need a very nice fluffy mixture for this. And you will see me doing multiple things at the same time. So I'm starting this, and then as soon as I had a little bit of time on my hands, I'm starting the next recipe. And as you can probably see, this egg white is starting to get very nice and thick, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I need it thick so it'll stick to the pecans when I add it to them. So now I'm going to be stirring my sugar and cinnamon, and then I will add my egg white that I just mixed up into the pecans and make sure that all of the pecans are covered in the egg white so that all of them will get some sugar stuck onto them. That's, I guess, the main trick on this recipe. We need to make sure that we stir the pecans with the egg white enough before we add the sugar so that all of them will have equal amount of sugar. Okay, so now we're ready for the sugar. We're just sprinkling the sugar on top and then give it another very good stir. Make sure all the pecans are covered in sugar. You'll probably see a little bit of sugar on the bottom of the bowl, but that is okay. As long as all of the pecans are covered in sugar, that is what we're looking for. And then I'm putting them in a parchment paper lined cookie sheet, and we will just roast them in here. It is important that we layer them out very evenly so that they will all roast equally. If we have like a very unequal layer, some of it might burn while the others are still not ready to be taken out of the oven. So I'm putting them in the oven, and then I will be stirring them after about 10 or 15 minutes and make sure that all of them get roasted evenly. And putting them back, and I would just kind of eyeball it. I'm not sure on the time how long I will roast them. So while the pecans are still roasting, I am getting started on some caramel sauce, and I will use the caramel sauce on all the other recipes that I am making today. So I'm just adding some of the sugar and the raw to my pan and put it on medium heat on the stove. And in the meantime, the pecans are done. I'm so excited to try these. So you put the sugar on medium heat and let it melt till it's completely melted. You might want to stir it quite frequently. And after all the sugar is melted, I am adding butter and heavy whipping cream. And since I'm adding salted butter, I do not add any salt on the side. So after the cream is added, I ended up with what looked like a cluster of sugar, but I was just simmering it away till everything was melted and I had a nice caramel sauce. I did end up with it being quite grainy, so I put it in a blender afterwards, and it was very smooth after that. So you see here that I'm taking it off the heat because it was kind of boiling too fast. So I'm just putting the heat down and then just let it simmer till everything is dissolved. This process could take a couple of minutes, maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. So on this recipe, I don't have measurements. I'm just adding some crushed up pecans to a bowl, and then I'm adding caramel sauce, just enough so that I can make little clusters of pecans with caramel with it. So you see I'm just adding more as I'm stirring, and I'm not sure exactly how much I added. Once I'm done with that, I see that it's a nice consistency. I'm making little clusters and putting them in a pan with parchment paper. And then they go in the freezer. And the next thing I'm making is peanut clusters, as we call them. My family actually shelled these peanuts the night before. And while the peanuts are roasting in the oven, I'm making the next recipe. This is heavy whipped cream with gelatin powder and sugar. I whipped it up, and then I'm putting it in a parchment paper lined container, and then I will put it in the freezer, let it freeze. After this is frozen, I'm going to top it with the exact same thing, the pecans with the caramel sauce, so that we have a 2-layered candy. So we're roasting the peanuts. Afterwards, we will take off all the red shells, and then we will also make some candy using these peanuts. So the heavy whipping cream is now frozen. I'm going to top it with the caramel pecans, and then I'll pop it back into the freezer. Next, I'm doing the peanut cluster recipe. I'm just putting the peanuts into a bowl lined with parchment paper. And then I will just make sure that I have an even layer, and I'll drizzle some of the caramel sauce on top. I'm also sprinkling it with salt because I do really like salted caramel. So I'll be drizzling some caramel sauce over top of it. And since I had quite a bit of peanuts, I did it 2 layers as well. After I drizzled a fair amount of caramel sauce onto it, I am also topping another layer of peanuts and then more caramel sauce over top, and then it will go into the freezer as well. So after it's all frozen, I'm taking it out of the freezer and I'm cutting it up into however big pieces I like. And then I will be popping it right back into the freezer because I'm going to dip these in chocolate, but I want them really cold and frozen. If I have quite a bit that I'm dipping in chocolate, I might even end up putting them back into the freezer in between. For the chocolate dip, I'm using chocolate chips. I'm adding butter, heavy whipping cream, and some coconut oil. And then I'm just melting it on a double burner. And as soon as it's melted and nice and smooth, I am ready to dip all of our candy in chocolate. And the reason for the coconut oil is because if you melt a chocolate chip, it's probably way too thick. Even after it's melted, you won't be able to dip it nicely. So first is the pecan caramel clusters that I'm dipping, and I had to put them back into the freezer in between because they were just getting too soft and I couldn't handle them. So next is what I call the ice cream pecan caramel. So that is all the treats we made for this holiday season. I hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope you will try these recipes. Bye.